about it. All right, let me give you this stat. Good stat from Paul Domowitch. Back to the Eagles here. We were talking about Josh Sweat and the defensive line and how disappointing they've been, frankly. So according to Damo, Josh Sweat had 53 QB pressures in the Eagles' first 10 games. That's 5.3 per game. That's a really good number. Last 6, not including Sunday's loss. He only played 12 snaps in that game. Some of that was you were getting the starters out of there after a while. He had just 15, 2.5 per game. 6.5 sacks in his first 10 games, 0 in the last 6 or 7, if you want to count the Sunday game.
Wow.
So you're going to tell me like that? You can tell me about pressure rate and all this other stuff? No, man.
All those geeky stats, right?
Yeah. You're paid to sack the quarterback.
Period.
And make an impact. And he was off to a great start. He is not. This is what's puzzling to me, Tone. Like, why is he falling off like this? Why is Reddick not the same guy that he was last year? Like, what's going on there? Is it as simple as Desai and Patricia don't know what they're doing, or are these guys just not showing up and playing as well?
And that's the $1 million question, because it's one or the other. It's one or the other. Now, that begs the question: which side are you willing to bet on? Are you willing to bet that it's more coaching related than player, or vice versa?
I'm going to say it's more coaching because these guys did it last year. Simply put, and throughout their career. Reddick. What's this? Reddick's fourth straight year in double digits. So I'll back the track record that he has versus Desai, who had 1 year as a defensive coordinator and it didn't really do all that well. Patricia, who had good years, mind you, but it hasn't been good of late for him. Maybe he's been figured out a little bit too.
That's another thing. That's another thing too, right? Howie Roseman, you decided to bring in a DC from Chicago, one of the worst teams in the NFL. And you thought that he could provide something of uniqueness, of credibility. And then you had your bet with Matt Patricia. Like it was just, again, miscalculation after miscalculation. Why? I'm not pulling anybody or anything off of the worst team in the NFL. Why would I do that? Why, do you see coaches up for jobs when they're the worst team in the NFL, or do you see coaches up for jobs when their team is in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, it's strange, right?
So why would you pull a DC off of a losing program?
Yeah.
It makes no sense when you think about it from that perspective, right? Why am I recruiting a loser? Matt Patricia failed as a head coach. Hasn't really been relevant in quite some time. Why am I recruiting a has-been? You brought in, you signed a loser and a has-been as your defense, as your leading defensive guys. Come on now.
Yeah.
I would have felt more better about your decision if you would have poached somebody off of, I don't know,
Baltimore,
a team that had a top 10, top 5 defense, even if it was an offensive assistant or a position coach of theirs. I would have felt more confident. So, okay, he came from a winning situation. Yeah. He has a track record of development. He is part of a winning program, right?
Well, the other interesting
part, it makes no sense when you think about it.
No, I agree, but I think the other interesting part of all this is what happened with Denard Wilson. You had the guy.
We know what happened, Rob. Rob, you know what happened. What happened.
He was too outspoken. He was wanted to do it his way. You think? Or what do you think? Tell me.
He threw too many curveballs in that interview, and I believe that, and I spoke to John McMullen about this. He wanted to add in some more wrinkles. He didn't want to change the defense entirely, but he wanted to add more wrinkles.
Maybe too aggressive with that philosophy that they have of not giving up big plays. He wanted to do a little bit more.
Probably so. Probably wanted to add in some tendency breakers. Some trend busters. Wanted to probably take it to another level. He been with the defense for the past 2 years as a position coach, and he figured, okay, naturally I should be up in line for the DC. You had him in the building. You had the answer in the building. You let him walk because your ego and your pride and you're so lockstep in your process. When you had the guy in the building, right? You felt so comfortable elevating Brian Johnson to a position of power, yet you didn't feel comfortable elevating Denard Wilson. Why? One of the two decided to play ball and one didn't. That's the only logical explanation, because the Eagles pride themselves on elevating from within. They believe in that.
Well, they
So
did
if you
it, Brian
allow,
Johnson. Yeah.
they did it. So if you allow Denard Wilson to walk, because the whole issue was, remember this, they're coming up with Super Bowl, meaning they got a late start on the hires, right? So naturally, a team wants to hire from within. That was the reason for bringing in Brian Johnson. That's why he got the job. They got a late start. You know, they wanted to elevate from within. He'd been here. He knew the situation. Why does those stipulations change for Denard Wilson? Oh, I know why. Because he says something that you didn't wholeheartedly agree with. He bucked your trend. He bucked your process and said, I want to add some more wrinkles to this thing because I believe I could take it to another level and we're better than what we played out there.
Let me add one more thing to it that they may not have liked if they heard it. Maybe he knew there were a lot of issues here and gave them real talk. Like, especially if some of the guys that he anticipated leaving left. You know, maybe he was too honest with them. Maybe it was, hey, look, you're going to have some issues on the back end. James is getting up there a little bit. We got some safety issues, GJ roles. You know what I mean? Maybe he gave them a little bit too much truth serum, and it was sort of like, hey, calm down, man. We're fine. This defense was one of the best in football last year. I don't know. I can't discount that part of it either. That there was a too much truth telling going on too. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of why that decision was made. I don't know.
That's exactly what it is. Too much truth telling, and some people prefer to be lied to. It's so funny. I heard somebody say one time, "Hey, listen, get the job first, and then start making your own decisions."
I've heard that as well.
Get the job first. You know, don't share your opinions in the interview.
You don't need to be in the interview saying, I don't really like that picture on the wall. It's like,
exactly.
I love the paint job in this office, and then you can
I love your process. I love the way you guys do business.
Yes.
Don't try to change the company from the interview table.
Yep.
Get the job first. Get a couple of direct deposits under your belt. Then you start to try to make some changes. Then you start to kind of weasel your way in. I think that's probably where Denard Wilson kind of went wrong. But again, being truthful, being honest should not be wrong. And that's the situation that the Philadelphia Eagles have created. Being honest is likely never the right move if you work for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Man,
that's the environment they've cultivated. So it's going to be important for Jeffrey Lurie, and he's shown us an ability to do so. He's shown us an ability to buck his trend. He's shown an ability to not to change. Right?
I agree.
Going from Andy to Chip to Doug to Nick. He's been pivoting his entire time as the Eagles owner. Don't be afraid to do it again. Because Howie Roseman, although you guys have achieved a lot together, he is not exempt from being evaluated.
No, agreed. And I do think that's the challenge that Jeffrey Lurie has, because he is so close with them. That can he step away from that relationship that they have and really look at it objectively and say, you know what? Yeah, there were things that were out of our control. This guy got hurt. This guy didn't play as well, blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever, that happens. But how much of this was we didn't do a good enough job evaluating the assistants that we chose, evaluating the players? We shouldn't have let this guy walk. TJ Edwards isn't breaking the bank anywhere in Chicago. He should be here. And that's on you, Howie. Like, how are you going to fix this? How are we going to look at this differently going forward so we don't fall into the same trap and make the same mistakes? Those are the hard conversations that he's going to have with Howie too, because, we don't talk probably nearly enough about Howie in this thing. We're looking at coaches. We're looking at players. We're looking at, looking at real immediate kind of stuff. But Howie and Jeffrey are the ones who signed off on these assistant coaches.
This is a top-down thing.
Yeah, 100%. And they're the ones, ultimately, Howie's the one who's got to manage this cap and say, can't pay this guy, can pay this guy, can't pay this guy. Like I said this before, I'll say it again. I'm okay with Hargrave. I get it. He got insane money. You felt like you were good. You were going to draft that position. You've done it the last 2 years. Fine. Do they miss him? Yeah, but I understand. That's the world we live in. GJ getting 7 to go to Detroit for 1 year. You couldn't have done that Edwards getting whatever around that kind of money in Chicago. You couldn't have done that. That's the problems I have.
Yeah. Ego allowed those players to walk out the door.
Yeah.
I'm not saying CJGJ didn't also write his own ticket.
I know he's difficult. I know he's difficult.
But at the same time, he went to Detroit for 1 year, $7 million, or 1 year, $8 million, whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the problem too.
You gave Bradbury more than that.
Yep. Yes, you did. And you restructured.
That's how you know the relationship soured.
Yeah.
Because they wanted CJGJ before Bradbury.
Yeah. I mean, look, let's be honest. CJGJ is a pain in the ass, but there are players that are pains in the asses that you got to sort of tolerate. That's
if you play well, listen, man, I'm not inviting you to a
cookout.
A cookout, or I'm not trying to go fishing with you. Listen, do you produce? Do you play well? Do your teammates like you? Okay, all right, I can roll with that.
Yeah,
I can roll with it. It wasn't like he didn't get in trouble off the field last year. He's an electric personality. He's eccentric. Okay,
he's a diva, like a receiver's a diva.
So what? He's a DB. DBs and receivers are the divas of the NFL. We all know this. It's a part of the game. It's a part of the culture. Those positions, you got to be arrogant. You got to be cocky. You got to play with some swagger. You got to have it in order to be successful at that position. It's innate. It's baked in.
Yep.
So a guy like CJGJ, as long as I didn't hear nothing from his teammates or he wasn't doing stuff off the field, I'm rolling with him. I would have paid him.
And again, there's differing opinions on this, but what I've heard on the TJ Edwards thing was they told him, go out, test the waters of free agency, come back to us, tell us what your offer is, and then we'll figure it out. And apparently he went out, tested, and the Eagles didn't really have much interest in
Yeah, I heard they didn't make him an offer.
Didn't make him an offer. Exactly. So it is what it is. So
it was
not here.
They sent them out on a lame dunk contract hunt. They knew they wasn't going to bring him back.
Right.
They wasted his time and wasted theirs.
So now you got to figure out the linebacker position. You got to figure out safety position. You got to figure out the corner position. I mean, you really are. I mean, all three of those areas are going to have to be addressed because you're not good enough. You're old at corner, and you can't really trust Avonte Maddox to hold up. Your safeties, aside from Blankenship, you need another one, and you need really 2 to 3 linebackers at this point. And maybe Nakobe Dean comes around next year. Maybe he does. You never know.
In other words, they need a whole defense.
Yeah, and your defensive line has mysteriously disappeared. So you better get to the root of why that is too, on top of everything else. All right, let's hit it, Tone. Let's come back. NFL. We're give you a couple updates on coaching. The Wink Martindale situation in New York. New York has got its own little circus going on. So we'll discuss that. Give you an update on viewership, Russell Wilson, Matt Eberflus, bunch of other stuff that we will dive into. Some update on some health situations for guys who will be playing in the playoffs or won't. And then at 1:30, Derek Gunn will be joining us. So don't go anywhere. That's Tony Shields. I'm Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Let's talk about Flynn Tree Services. Yes, they are an experienced, licensed, and insured Pennsylvania tree services company that will trim or remove any unwanted trees off of your property. They offer cost-effective solutions to any tree problem that you may face, and they are experts at trimming all types of trees, and they serve southeastern Pennsylvania, South Jersey, and northern Delaware. Keep in mind, we're in, storm season, hurricane season. It's a great time to get your trees evaluated, before we have another mess like we had on our hands last night in this area, at least. Go to their Facebook or Instagram page for more information or a sampling of their work. Give Flynn Tree Services a call, 610-850-2848, 610-850-2848, or online at flynntreeservices.com. That's Flynn,